Thanks to the witnesses as well. Secretary Darcy, I'd like to ask you and General Bostic if he feels the need to join in to talk with me about water in the arid West. I don't need to tell you how bad the drought is in California, but obviously you're a key agency when it comes to managing our scarce water resources. You've got lots of multi-purpose projects that provide both flood control and water supply benefits. And one of the things that I've been working on with you and with some of my local stakeholders is modernizing the Corps of Engineers operating manual and rule curves, which are based on historic hydrology and do not yet incorporate modern weather science, satellite data, things that have come into play long after those manuals were put together back in the 1950s. So I'm really heartened that you're participating in a pilot project with the National Weather Service and the Sonoma County Water Agency to see if there are opportunities where the weather data is reliable enough that you can begin considering it when you decide when to release water from these reservoirs. We may not yet be at a point where we can tell you exactly how much water is going to come from a storm, but I think you're going to find that we are at a point that when there's no storm at all and we know no rain is coming, we know that with a lot of certainty because we have satellites and weather data that we want you to consider and we think should absolutely be part of your decision-making process. And toward that end, last year in WRDA, the Corps was instructed to submit a report within a year on how they could make changes to reservoir operations in arid regions to improve water supply during droughts. I think that this kind of modern forecast-based reservoir operations would be a perfect fit. But I want to just ask you if you're on track to complete that report.
I believe so, but I'm going to check in the next 10 minutes to make sure I'm right.
Okay. Terrific. Well, again, it's critically important. It's also important that we seize opportunities to do water reuse and recycling wherever we can. I think that's what Congress had in mind in the last WRDA when the Corps was instructed to develop new guidelines under Section 1014 on how non-federal interests can do water resource development projects and then later seek reimbursement from the Corps. We want these projects to move forward. And I know that a couple of months ago in an appropriations subcommittee, Representative Roybal Allard asked you specifically whether environmental infrastructure projects like water recycling would be eligible. And she got a favorable response at that time. Unfortunately, I sent a letter seeking clarity on that, and on April 20th, I got a letter from you saying no, environmental infrastructure projects would not be eligible. And so I'm just hoping that you continue as you develop the new guidelines for Section 1014 that we asked you to do, that you continue to have an open mind about the critical role that water reuse and recycling is going to have to play to get us through this critical drought in the West, and the opportunity that we have for the Corps of Engineers to help us stretch our water supplies. I hope you'll reconsider the position that you outlined in that letter of April the 20th. Do you want to comment on that?
Yes, Congressman. The environmental infrastructure is not within the Corps missions, but I understand that recycling and reuse continue to be a growing need, especially in the West. And I can tell you that I will take another look at it. However, as I said, environmental infrastructure, which wastewater and these kinds of projects are considered, are not within the Corps mission.
Yeah. In the limited time I have left, I want to ask you about Section 1135, Continuing Authorities Program projects. We have a very important one in Sonoma County. These are projects that look to modernize, modify, and improve existing Corps projects to improve their environmental performance. But that environmental performance can also be critical to water supply reliability, as it is in the case of the Sonoma County Water Agency project on the Russian River. Compliance with the biological opinion for salmon through that project is going to be key to long-term water supply reliability. The Corps continues to request much less funding for this program than is needed to address the critical backlog and to keep these projects moving. Can you speak to why the administration is underfunding this program year after year?
Congressman, in this year's budget, I believe we requested $3.5 million, for all of our continuing authorities programs. One of the reasons is because we had a great deal of carryover in that account. We had over $100 million carryover from the year before, which is why we didn't request as much as maybe we had in years past. Also, some of the challenges we have in some of the CAP programs is our local sponsors oftentimes over time are either unable to meet the cost share match. And so we're trying to figure out a way within our CAP programs, because the CAP authority is one that's used a lot because of the low dollar, not only the low dollar amount, but not the need for the extensive authorization process. So we're trying to get a handle on how we can spend down the carryover, as well as how we can improve how we communicate with our stakeholders to be able to help them come up with their portion of a cost shared responsibility.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I yield back.